Let's declare one here. So dim v cylinder params as variant, and let's say the cylinder params equals to the SV surface dot cylinder params. Now it says, so we have an array of 7 doubles, and the interesting one to us is the last one, the radius. So the arrays in VBA start from 0, so we would say this message box or debug print, whatever you prefer. I'm doing the message box so you guys understand what's going on here. So v cylinder params of 6, because there are 7 places, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is the seventh place in the array, and that's the radius. That's what's interesting to us, basically. And if we were to go okay, put a breakpoint here, and let's run the macro. Let's just deselect everything here. Okay, it's already deselected, and if we were to run the macro, let's delete this breakpoint. And so the first one says it's 0.01905. Now why it's this is because everything in SolidWorks when you're coding is in meters. So if we were to say okay, let's go to the hole that was selected here, it's 1.5 inches. And if we were to, let's change this to the metric system, it would be 38.1 millimeters. And if we were to say times 1,000 times 1,000 times 2, and let's continue. Okay, and do this. It says 101.6. Let's see if that's correct. It's 101.6 millimeters. It has a diameter of 101.6 millimeters, right? Then let's go to the next one. It has a diameter of 63.5, pretty much. And let's see if that's correct, right? It's 63.5 millimeters. So essentially that's how you can check like the diameter and check if these are cylindrical surfaces. Okay, so now we have the diameter of the holes. Based on that diameter, we can use a simple if statement and filter out the diameter that interests us. But we need to now color the holes. So in order for us to color the holes, we need to make this face yellow or red or something like that. And we can go into the API help and see if we have anything of use in the face to interface. So the face to interface, and let's see here. We have the set material property values too. It takes a bit of research on how to find the actual methods and properties that are interesting to you, to your case, but sometimes you can use the macro recorder, but about that in another video. So we have the set material property values for the face object. And you see we have to pass in an array of material property values. Now, what's interesting to us is the RGB here. Also, you have arguments for the ambient, diffuse, specular, shyness, transparency, emission. So it describes the entire aesthetic visual properties of an entity in the SolidWorks graphic interface. To be honest with you, I don't even know what to pass in here for the emission, the transparency, the shyness, the specular, the diffuse, the ambient. So what we're gonna do is go to the coloring here and then change the color of this hole, say okay. And now let's see here, we have set. Now since we can select this object, loop through each and every individual face and get the entities, we can probably get the material properties value too. So what we can do is just select this hole, then get the material property values, and then pass those material property values into our original macro. So what we're gonna do here is go Tools, Macro, New. And let's call this macro get color. We did some cleaning up, and let's set the model to the active document. And since the idea is that we just select this face here and then get the material property values, we need something to handle the selection. Now for selections in the API help, you have an object called the selection manager. The selection manager, here it is, and it has its members. So you handle all selections with the selection manager. And the selection manager here is a property of the model.doc2 object. So what we need to do is instantiate, make an object, make a variable of the type selection manager, and then instantiate it with our active document. So here what we're going to do is declare a variable selection manager as SolidWorks selection mgr and set that as the selection manager of the currently active document, in our case the currently active part document. So sv model dot selection manager. Okay, now let's see the methods properties that we have for the selection manager object. And here we have the get selected object 6 method. And this method gets the selected object. That's what we need. So let's write that down. So dim and just an explanation here. So sometimes you're going to work with macros programs that you don't know what the user actually selected, and you have a return value too here of return value that gives you an identity of an enumeration of what the user actually selected, and you have each and every entity type here. But what we could do potentially here is check what the user selected. So that would be a normal practice, not a best practice, but a normal practice. Check what did the user select. Did the user select something that we anticipated he would select? But we're not going to go into that here. So what we're going to just do is say, okay, here we're going to make a face variable, and set that SV face equal to the SV selection manager dot get selected object 6, and we have to pass in some variables here, pass in some arguments here. So the arguments that we need to pass is index position within the current list of selected items with index ranges from 1 to I selection manager get selected object count. What this means is essentially that the user can select multiple things here, not just multiple faces, but multiple entities, vertices, edges, faces. So the selection can be numerous. It can go up to 100 pretty much. And the thing that we need to do here is get the index. Now the index in the selection manager starts from 1 and goes up to the number of selections that we did. So I selected this face, then I selected this edge, then I selected this vertex, right? The index of 1 would be on this face here. The second would be on this edge, and the third would be on this vertex. So we know that we're just going to select this face. So what we're going to do is just pass in the index 1 and mark here. Let's see what mark is. In the API help, when we go, it says all selections regardless of marks, only selections without marks. Now marks can be put into into different entities in SolidWorks, but we're not gonna go too deep into that. What we're gonna do here is just say -1, so all selections regardless of marks. And now let's see, now let's get the material property values. Let's go into the get material property values. You have 2 of these. So you have a method for the iComponent2, that's for assemblies. When you have a component and it has its own color and material property values, but we're interested in the one for the face 2 object. And let's see the return value. The return value is an array of material property values for this face. We need to pass in 2 arguments, configuration option as defined in SV in configuration options, and then numeration here. So all configurations, link to parent, specify configuration, this configuration. We're interested in this configuration. We're not going into too in depth here, so we're just gonna pass in 1 because we're interested in this active configuration. So okay, dim v material prop values as variant and v material prop values equals to the SV face dot get material property values 2. And like we said, we're gonna pass in 1. So we're interested in this configuration. And let's go to the API help here. Here we have an argument config names. So, but there is a remark here that if you set config option to this configuration or all configurations, you can pass in nothing to the config names and it is ignored. So that's what we're going to do. We're gonna pass in nothing, and then for I equals L bound v material prop values to U bound v material prop values next I, and let's